UpTalk Podcast is pleased to be part of the Mental Health News Radio Network, the world's largest collection of streaming shows all centered on mental health and attacking the issue from every angle. Check out the mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. We are supported by DT Social Solutions, which helps small businesses elevate their social media presence to drive sales and increase brand awareness. Whether it's through a consulting session, workshop, or full-on social media management, DT will make sure you are no longer on the sidelines of the biggest platforms. Check out dtsocialsolutions.com for more info. I am honored to tell you that we have 3 fantastic sponsors on board for the second half of Season 4, starting with the Tema Foundation, a charitable organization established to provide support and educational resources and training to Canada's first responders, public safety, military personnel, and their families as they navigate through the potential psychological stressors of their jobs. Through established partnerships and collaboration with like-minded people and organizations, the Tema Foundation will continue to provide resilience-focused training, advocate for more accessible mental health resources, and aim to ensure that no one suffers alone. You can follow the Tema Foundation on Twitter at the Tema Foundation, on Facebook at the Tema Foundation, or contact via the website thetemafoundation.com. We are also brought to you by Boss Helps, a groundbreaking program for public safety personnel, military, and Crown prosecutors, facilitated by WGM Psychological Services through a partnership with Wounded Warriors Canada. Before operational stress programming is empowering public safety personnel to be in charge of the effects of job stress rather than allowing those stresses to be in charge of them. Dr. Megan McElhern states that she has seen a tremendous shift in the recognition of operational stress as a serious mental health issue. The BOSS programs are giving many of these members the education and tools to change the effects of these stresses on their work and personal lives. For more information, check out bosshelps.com. And last but not least, we are brought to you by Legacy Play Society. The sights, sounds, and carnage that first responders deal with on a daily basis can create an accumulation of psychological and physical stress that, if not addressed, will become an operational stress injury in many ways. Legacy Place provides confidential support with these 3 objectives. 1. Provide confidential crisis response by telephone for first responders and military personnel that facilitates connection to professionals and peer support. 2. Provide confidential and safe transitional housing to first responders and military personnel, individually or as a family, for their well-being, security, and access to professional support so that they can recover quickly from a broad range of serious difficulties. And 3. Increase knowledge, reduce stigma, and enable networking by organizing and facilitating mental health and suicide awareness conferences for the military, medical, and law enforcement communities. For more information on Legacy Place, go to legacyplacesociety.com. I'm really happy to have these sponsors on board. All of them are near and dear to my heart for different reasons and have all helped me get to where I am today. Really happy to have them on board. The topics and subject matters of this podcast may trigger some listeners. So please make sure that you do whatever you need to do to put yourself in the best mind frame possible to listen to the podcast and get the most out of it. So go for a walk, do some yoga, meditate, have a coffee, whatever it is you do to get yourself in that good place. Go do that. Then enjoy this episode. That's enough of that. Let's get back to the show.
You are listening to UpTalk with Sean Conahan. The gloves are off, and it's time to have a chat.
Hello, people, and welcome back to UpTalk after our summer break. I hope you guys had a great couple months. I did. I really enjoyed it. I worked a lot, but did get home, and we had a good family trip to Boston, my first time in Boston, which was wicked. Good time. As you can see, we got a little facelift, got a little new logo. I hope you like it. Huge thanks to my brother Rick Tremblay, who I met through Tema. He's a graphic design wizard. I messaged him to ask a question about how to do something with a picture. And thankfully, he was really honest with me and said, you know what, I need to change your whole logo because I don't like it. So I went, yes, do it. You never, ever turn down a professional when they want to help you out. Anyway, love it. Love the logo. Let me know what you think. Big thanks to him. And as you heard, we have some sponsors on board for the second half of the season. So I debated this a long time, talked to people about it, and I decided to do exactly what you heard. I'm going to put all the sponsor info at the beginning, then we get into the show. I'm really not comfortable with interrupting the chat that I'm in to play a sponsor ad. I don't think it's conducive to maintaining that chat, that good back and forth. I want you to feel like you're there with us, and breaking for a commercial just is not going to cut it. That's how I feel for right now. That's when you're going to hear it. All right, and then we'll just get into the show. This episode is dedicated to Scott Barteaux. Scott was a paramedic in Nova Scotia for 23 years and was very proud and dedicated to his career. He was also a soccer and volleyball coach, and his favorite job of all time was being a dad. I knew Scott, worked with him, and on May 23rd, 2018, Scott died by suicide. So this episode is dedicated to his life and career. If you would like an episode of the podcast dedicated to a first responder in your life that you have lost, please email me at uptalkpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll make that happen. It will be my pleasure. So the second half of Season 4 is going to be busy. Okay, there's going to be a minimum of 12 episodes coming between now and the end of the year. It's going to be awesome. Lots of amazing guests lined up, lots of cool chats, and lots to learn from these people. So I hope you come along with me. Check out UpTalk Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Give us a like or a follow. That would be wicked. Share as much as you can or as much as you're willing to. That would be awesome. And I thank you for that. I think that's about it for now. I think that's all I have. My guest, this episode, you've heard him before on an earlier guest of UpTalk. If you want his backstory, you're going to have to go back and listen because we're not going to get into it again. We had too much other stuff to talk about. This guy I met at Project Trauma Support. He's one of the shepherds, the mentors at Project Trauma Support when I was there. He is an in-your-face, tell it like it is, passionate guy with a lot of love. Actually, he's the guy that I stole More Love, Less Judgment from. Stole it. I readily admit that, and have used it ever since. He's moving on with his mental health advocacy career, transitioning from life as a police officer, and has recently started an initiative called Up Yours. You may have seen it on Facebook or on social media. Check that out. Buckle up. Welcome back to Hal Hughes.
It was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in.
Welcome back to UpTalk, Hal. It's been too long.
Hey, Sean. It's been like 2 years, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. You were last on UpTalk on July 4th, 2017. It's been a while.
That time went really fast, and a lot's happened since then. That's crazy.
Yeah. For those of you listening that don't know Hal, I'm going to invite you to go back to UpTalk Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3, and get all of Hal's backstory and everything up to when I spoke to him, because we're not going to go over that again today because we got too much stuff to talk about, Hal.
Yeah, it sounds good, buddy. So we'll start from today, or start from the 7th. So when I last talked to you,
yeah,
I guess the summer of 2017.
Yeah, go shoot. Whatever you want to talk. Like, what have you been doing? I know you went to school. Like, talk about all that.
Yeah, well, look, I tried to go back to work with the OPP. I kind of got green lighted by my doctors finally. Had to sort of fight my way to get that. And then basically the only restrictions that were put on my initial return to work was that they didn't want me back at detachment. I'm an OPP officer. They wanted me, East region, sort of a quiet desk job to start, just because I've been off for so long with the brain injury and mental illness. So unfortunately, OPP responded by saying that the only spot we had for you was in one of the buildings at detachment, that they didn't have a desk or a laptop in all of the East Region headquarters for me. Yeah, which was, needless to say, as someone who was fighting and struggling to get back to work, that was a bit shocking. So basically, my WSFE worker said she was quite upset by that. A huge organization didn't have a desk for me. She said, well, why don't you go back to school instead? You ever thought about that? I said, well, yeah, I got an undergrad though. You guys aren't going to support a master's. Like hasn't been done before. And she said, watch me go. And she kind of, was a huge advocate and got them to support a master's degree. So I've been doing that since, January 2018. I started my master's in psychology.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of, good, bad, who knows, right? Sometimes the most awful thing ends up being a blessing in disguise, which is exactly what the not getting back with OPP meant for me, was that I could really pursue what my true passion was, which was sort of getting the educational background to support the work I'd already been doing with first responders and other people that were struggling. So it was, it couldn't have worked out any better for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, jumping to now and seeing the things that you're doing, obviously. What at that time though, was that how hard was it not to be in the OPP?
I mean, sort of in terms of my identity and stuff, like questioning. I think I'd already gone through a little bit of a transition in sort of my identity, because I'd been off work since 2013 with the brain injury that. I'd sort of accepted that, life's about change. It's the only constant, right? And I'd sort of accepted that I would never be back in a cruiser, with my gun belt on chasing bad guys, just because of my vulnerabilities with my head injury. So, I had already made that transition in my head. And, so it wasn't a huge, there was an initial hurt. That was just based on, I had an unrealistic expectation of how OPP was going to respond, to my request. So once I adjusted expectations in line with reality, which was that, this is just how this organization works at times. Things aren't ideal. I didn't take it personally, and I moved forward. So there wasn't a huge, crushing blow there, because on the heels of getting sort of turned away, I was, then transitioned into excitement towards, getting to go back to school again. And the school I'm in, it's based online as the curriculum, and then I do an 8-month practicum at the end, clinically, which I'm starting in September. I'm looking for that. Yeah.
And where are you going to do that practicum?
It's head of a clinic in Ottawa. My supervisor's a clinical psychologist. His name's Dr. Edward Murray, which I think you're familiar with him. He's done a ton of...
you're going to be with Dr. Ed.
Yeah, he's done a ton of clinical work with a lot of his emphasis on PTSD and first responders and military. So really couldn't have a better mentor and someone supervising me for my practicum. It's
That's so awesome. I can't believe that.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't have better than that.
No.
So you're doing this, and I know you probably, even though I know you obviously from Project Trauma Support. So how often were you going out and speaking other places?
So this speaking, it's funny. I never thought I'd be a keynote speaker, but at Project Trauma Support, I sort of got my feet wet. And Dr. Manuela gave me the opportunity to do a lot of the facilitating and teaching different segments of the program. And the first time I went to speak there, I just about threw up and sat in a chair while I spoke. And now I do a lot of speaking, keynote addresses, and half-day workshops where I teach people how to go from hiding in their basements, sick with mental illness, to getting back to life. To now I get the honor of being on the stage with Les Brown coming up this fall in October, who's probably one of the number 2 in the world for motivational speakers, I would say.
Wow.
I was asked to speak at his event. So it's crazy what a couple of years can do to somebody.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. So obviously you enjoy it, and then, you know, have you been traveling around a lot speaking?
Yeah, I've spoken probably 6-7 times this year, and then I've done 5 or 6 half-day workshops as well. Mostly fairly close to home, within a couple-hour radius of where I live. I was Big Idea Speakers, a professional keynote speaking firm, and they saw one of my videos and reached out and asked me. So they're sort of representing me now in some of my larger speaking things. But I really enjoy doing the half-day workshops. That's sort of where my passion is. I mean, speaking for an hour from a stage is great. It's kind of half entertainment, half information you're conveying. You know, there's only so much you can do in that amount of time. But when I got 4 or 5 hours with a group of people, 20 to 30 people in a room, I find that I can make sort of my biggest impact on helping people that are hurting. The biggest thing, the reason I have sort of a hand up on some clinicians in some ways, while I don't necessarily have the experience that some of these clinicians do, a lot of them don't have the firsthand lived experience of having been at rock bottom with addiction and mental illness and then having climbed up through it. So I can look other people in the face that are down in that dark place and say, look, I know how you feel. I felt the same way. What I found is this is what you need to do to get out of there.
Right.
And I also, my experiences over the years with numerous psychologists, psychiatrists, physiatrists, et cetera, in my recovery, a lot of times, they were unenthusiastic about making suggestions on what I need to do to recover. I think in part because they aren't doing those things either. It's hard to be excited about telling someone to exercise, telling someone to meditate, telling someone to take these perspectives when they aren't doing that themselves. So a lot of the talk therapy is, it can be fruitful. You certainly need to change your perspectives to move forward sometimes in life, but there's also a lot of, core habits, the stuff that we have to do if we want to get better. It's never usually a mystery why we're sick. If you look at your daily habits,
right, it
usually explains it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. That's awesome. I want to touch back to that. I'm going to loop back to that in a second. So then, where did you get the idea, or when did Up Yours start to form?
I can't remember the initial sort of spawning of that, but basically, in a lot of the teaching I've done, and especially in the work I've done with first responders and military, I mean, swearing is sort of part of the subculture, right? I mean, that it's was sort of in working with that group, kind of those kinds of people. It was sort of a I'm myself, like I tend to swear a lot. And so working with that population, I swore a lot, just being myself. And so Up Yours, really it's sort of that brand is sort of an attitude. It's about upping your resiliency, which is that's my sort of niche of teaching and coaching, is teaching resiliency. Right. So it's about upping your mental and emotional state, the Up Yours, but it's also kind of a wink of the eye, nod of the head to sort of my past in that subculture where swearing is part of it. But it's also sort of Up Yours is sort of that spirit of rebellion. It's about rebelling against adversity as opposed to, allowing it to keep you pressed down. It's a reminder really to myself every time I put on one of my hats or shirts that, this is a battle that I'm in and that other people are in. This is a battle for our lives, and in that Up Yours battle, we tend to think that it's a battle. When I was initially very, very sick, it was a battle against everybody else, right? It was a battle against my employer. It was a battle against bad guys on the street as a cop. It was always battles outside myself. But Up Yours, what it's really about is when you come to the realization that the battle's always within, and it's the battle for happiness and peace and to feel like we're enough. Those are the true battles that we're facing.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, and what you've always said is that it's a choice. Like, if we're not there, it's because we've made the choices not to be there.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's really, really hard. I know if any of your listeners are in a really bad place right now, that's really hard to hear.
Yes.
Like, we don't hear that it's our responsibility that we're sick. Like, and here's what I've come to is that while you may not be to blame for your circumstances, right. Like I wasn't to blame for getting smacked in the head really hard twice, right? I wasn't to blame for the bipolar disorder I got diagnosed with and the PTSD. Like, a bunch of stuff happened to me. That's just what happened. That's just life, right? I wasn't to blame for it, but I sure as hell am responsible for getting myself out of it. And the longer that I pointed fingers, hey, WSIB isn't doing what they need to do. Hey, my employer, hey, my family doesn't support me. Hey, my brothers have forgotten about me. As long as I'm pointing my finger outwards and don't take responsibility for my recovery, I got no chance of getting better. It's only when we decide, look, this is a choice. I got to choose to start doing the right things on a daily basis to get better. And as soon as you make that shift, then suddenly, you start doing the right things and you start getting better results in your life and you start believing that you can recover. And, I can remember, in 2013, I thought, and I was told by the clinicians that PTSD is a chronic, lifelong condition that you just learn to manage the symptoms. And I now believe that's a crock of shit. I do not believe that it's a chronic, incurable disease. Look, people recover from brain tumors that they have to have excised from their skulls and then they get a complete recovery. You're telling me, that you can't recover from PTSD? You absolutely can. You can absolutely recover from it and, get stronger from it. Look, bones mend stronger in the broken places, right? I mean, it's the same with whether it's PTSD, any other mental illness or a broken leg. You can get through the other side stronger. So, if I could say anything to your listeners, is give up the story. Like, the reason we stay stuck in life is the stories that we've been telling ourselves about why we're stuck. So if the story that you're telling yourself is PTSD is a chronic condition that I'm just going to have to manage and will never get over, that's true. But you got no chance of recovery if that's your story around it. My story is completely different. What I started telling myself was, I'm going to get better from this. I'm going to get stronger, come out the other side and help other people,
Yeah, and the other problem is the people's it'd be your definition of recover would be the other issue. So if you're the person and you think recovery means that you're going to be back to like it never happened or like before it happened, well, that's not what this looks like. Like, I mean, you touched on it. You're actually going to be stronger when you get through this. You're not going to be the same person. You're going to be a different person. But you're going to be a better person.
Yeah, and I think, this notion of resiliency is exactly what you're kind of alluding to, is that the notion of resiliency is that you go through a bunch of stuff and you come out the other side and you're able to get back to who you were before. Well, to me, that's just a waste of time. Yeah. If I'm going to go through hell, I don't want to get back to who I was before. I want to come back, sort of reinvented and stronger. Otherwise, what did I go through all that stuff for? And the thing is, the need that we have most as humans is to maintain who we identify with as ourselves. We will do anything to maintain that sense of self. Right. And you kind of gotta let go of that when you go through something really traumatic, is you gotta let go of who you were and be willing to embrace something else. And as humans, look, we're not wired to embrace change, are we? We're wired to keep things exactly the same, even if it's complete shit that we're stuck in. Which is part of why a lot of times when guys get sick, and this is where I was at a certain point, was I was more willing to stay really, really uncomfortable in the pain and suffering than I was to embrace the possibility of change and what that might look like. Like, part of the fear of recovery sometimes for guys is that they're not sure what that will look like. Like, what does that mean? If I get better, do I have to go back to work? If I get better, will I have to, and when you're sick and you're sick on your couch long enough, you get scared of all those possibilities. You get scared of failure, that you'll try to recover and you won't,
right. Yeah. Yeah, you can make all sorts of things up in your head as far as, the longer it goes, reasons why you shouldn't get up off the couch or that you don't have to, this is all about owning your growth. And that's been the theme of UpTalk this year, is owning your growth, and what that means is taking responsibility for your own well-being, because my opinion, psychologists and your health professionals get you so far. They can help you reprocess memories, from traumatic back to narrative. That totally is legit. But there gets to a point where they've done that work, they've led you through that work, and now it's time for you to do some work and to do the things that you need to do in order to experience post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. it wasn't any doctors or clinicians or medications that got me better. In fact, that whole system, I would say, actually made me more sick in a lot of ways. I think, to be honest, it kept me alive when I was in the really acute, stages of it. But then it just kept me more and more sick, staying stuck in that system. And, you're right. Like, you have to take responsibility and, like you said, do the things you need to do. And it all comes down to action, right? You can sit and think all you want, but eventually you got to change. If you want to change your results, you got to change your actions. Right. And, the stuff that I teach in terms of the habits of resiliency to get people out of the darkness is, I always say, look, this is really, really simple. Do this every day, and you'll start to get some momentum and feel better. But I never say it's easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And so the thing that's going to get you past that inertia is you got to have a strong reason why, a goal or a dream to pull you out of the darkness. We spend so much time when we're sick, guys that have PTSD and other, women that have mental illness, men and women that have these kinds of issues that are going on. We spend so much time focused on either being anxious about what could happen or being upset about what happened in the past that, when you're looking in your rearview mirror, it's really hard to move forward. And that's why, when I start working with people, I tell them, look, we got to figure out what you want in life, because you got to have a really big reason why to recover. Because if you don't have a really big reason why, all you're going to see is all the obstacles in your way, and you're going to focus on that. And our whole lives come down to what we focus on, what meaning we attach to it. And if we can focus on a goal or dream that's maybe bigger than you even think's possible right now, and if you're staring up at that big dream, you're going to see past all those obstacles. So, one of the things that a lot of times is missing in clinical work, and at least in my experience, is that doesn't get addressed. The whole, like, what do you want? What do you really want? What's your passion? And starting to reignite some of those things in people. That's a really important part of the healing process. Now, I know that's hard to hear when people are sitting there and have a hard time even getting out of bed.
Right.
But it's just one of the steps. It's just one of the habits. In my experience, people generally tend to overestimate what they're going to do in a year in terms of recovery or change or, goals. Right. And they underestimate the difference they can impact themselves in a day.
Yeah.
You get up and do all the right things in one day, you start to get some momentum. When I first started to recover, I broke down my recovery into moments. The meditation teaches is carpe memento meditation. That's what I chant in my head over and over again, because I was like, I can't be happy or non-anxious for an hour. I better focus on just one moment in time. How do I control my emotions for one moment? And then I started to build the hours, and then days, and then weeks. And most emotions are sort of a habit. We start with a feeling, which becomes an emotion. And if the emotion goes on very long, it becomes a mood. And if your mood carries on time, it becomes a personality. I was an angry, anxious dude, right? So I decided, look, I got to break it down, and I got to start intervening at points where I start to have a feeling or emotion. If I intervene there, this will turn into a mood. My day won't be shot, then my week, then my month. And, a year goes by. Look, Hal's an angry guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. That's what I've started to try to do, because I've been trying to do this, do the things that I know I need to do. Like, I know that meditation works for me and it helps. I know that yoga works and it helps. I know, regular exercise is, helps. All these things help, but I suck. I haven't been successful at getting them to be a regular part of my routine. And what I found was I was biting off bigger chunks than I could chew. And what I needed to do was exactly what you're talking about, is to boil it down to moments. So now what I do is, what I've concentrated on is exactly what you're talking about, the feelings I get or the messages I get from my brain, that the ones that say, you know what, you're having you had a good day yesterday, you can take today off, or that give me any excuse I can to not do the things that I know I need to do. As soon as I have those thoughts, I immediately tell my brain to shut the fuck up. And you have to. You almost have to have that discussion. We always say, if you had a broken arm, if I had a cast on my arm, nobody, including myself, would expect me to throw a ball with that arm or bear my own weight. So why would I be trusting negative thoughts from a brain that is injured. Why would I trust that? That's what I had to start telling myself. So every thought that comes from my brain all day, I analyze. Okay, is this bullshit? Is this just injured bullshit? Agonal breaths that I'm getting from my injured brain that are just bullshit, and I just need to ignore. Or is my brain giving me a good message, which can sometimes be hard to differentiate. But you really need to micromanage every single thought of your day, I think, in order to really make a dent.
Yeah, so a few things, some great points there. So like what you just said, in terms of micromanagement, whatever we're trying to influence in terms of for positive results, the frequency that we check in with the results, the greater impact we can have. So like if you went on a diet, let's say I went on a diet and I wanted to lose some weight. If I weighed myself once a year, I would have very little impact. I'd probably gain weight. But if I weigh myself once a month or once a day, I can have a better impact. So like what you're saying, when you're checking in with what your brain's telling you or your emotions, you can impact them better. The other thing is, if you feed yourself shit, your body will be crap and you get crappy results in terms of your physiology and your physical health. So it's the same thing with the brain. So when I was really sick, I'd get up and watch CNN for 4 hours in the morning. And my peer group was other really sick, negative people. So no surprise that I wasn't recovering. So part of my daily routine to combat what you're talking about with your brain feeding you crap is I feed my brain really good stuff. So while I'm cutting the grass, I'll have my headphones in. I'll be listening to for free off of YouTube, by the way, like the best motivational and life coaches in the world I have in my brain for 10 minutes in the morning every day. So how that will incrementally impact me on some level, right?
Yeah.
And all of these little things, whether it's like stuff you've mentioned, like meditation, exercise, putting that good stuff in your brain, people go, well, what difference does that make? Only a little wee tiny difference. But across time, these little differences in our daily routine have huge impacts.
Right.
People say, well, what difference can meditation make? Well, a little bit short term, a little bit, but across time has a huge difference. So, I do a gratitude meditation every morning for a minute after my regular meditation. I just sit for 60 seconds and I'm just think about what I'm grateful for in my head. I do that in the morning. I do that at night. Now, is that going to change my whole life? Yeah, across time it shifts because we all have this emotional center of gravity where, where I was angry and anxious. Those are two states, the only ones I knew. And across time, through all these things I'm talking about and through this gratitude thing that I do, I've now shifted where I'm generally a grateful, happy person most of the time. So my emotional center of gravity can shift. But look, it's a lot of hard work. And one of the biggest things I realize is that, if you're not doing the things you need to know, it may be a product of who you're hanging out with too. That's a big part of it. So the simplest way to become a person who exercises every day, for that to be the identity of you have in your head, is I am an athlete or I'm a person that exercises every day, is hang out with people that work out every day. That's the simplest. When they look at guys and they're going to release them from prison, the number one predictor of whether there's going to be recidivism, whether they're going to do something bad again, the number one predictor is their peer group. That's the number one predictor. So I'm well aware of that. So I hang out with guys so I recently decided to run a 100-mile race in the fall, so I've been training for that.
Really?
So one of the guys who I follow online and reach out to online is the guy's name is John Paul Bedard. And he's, look that guy up, crazy guy, amazing athlete. He's running 30 marathons in a row before the Toronto Marathon. He's raising awareness for victims of childhood sexual abuse. And he's running a marathon a day for 30 days leading up to that. So I reach out to him and I look up to him because I've got my own goals when it comes to running. And so who you hang out with is going to have a huge impact on every area of your life. I've got other friends who I associate with, my best friend's a cardiac surgeon. So academically and scholastically, he's a great person to hang around because he makes me, think bigger than where I'm at now in that area of my life.
Right.
The worst thing we can do is, if you hang out with people that don't exercise, don't meditate, aren't focused in, academic, if that's one of the areas you want to work on, or aren't successful in business or whatever, guess where you're going to end up in 5 years, But, there's a lot of people that they speak at events with, and this Les Brown event that I got coming up, the whole focus is kind of on like unleashing your greatness. And I'm all for that. Like, you know, that's great because that's part of like having big goals and dreams, which is, you know, part of recovery actually too. But I'm much more focused on how to be happy, because I know a lot of people who are really successful and accomplished in areas and they're miserable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my theme is happiness. And luckily the happy people that have been on our planet, that are on our planet now, have left behind clues. And I just try to copy that. You know, there's a lot of people that think, you know, everyone's on their own unique journey and we've all got to find our own way to happiness. And that's true to a certain extent, but the commonality in terms of what we all need to do to be happy is much greater than the differences.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as humans, there's things that if we do, we'll be more happy than if we don't do them.
Yeah, but unfortunately, a lot of us, and I'll put me in there as well because I've had these feelings, a lot of us just don't want to do the work, and we don't want to hear that it takes a lot of time. We want the instant switch. We don't want to hear that, oh, this will get you there, this path will get you there, and it's going to be really hard. Well, fuck that. I'm not doing that then. Why would I do that? Like, for some reason, we talk ourselves out of it. Even though that is the path, like that is the way, we will like totally avoid it at all costs.
Yeah, I mean, there's the innate human drive to keep things the same, right? But I would challenge you on what you just said in that belief, in that whether you're going to make yourself miserable or make yourself happy, it's generally the same amount of work.
Right, but it doesn't seem that way.
It's a different kind of
seem that way.
Okay, so you can because change is required.
Right.
That's why it feels like more work.
Yeah.
But rather than, you know, I'll just use myself as an example. Rather than sleeping for 18 hours, then getting up and watching CNN for 4 hours, then starting to abuse painkillers, then hanging out with negative people, putting negative stuff in my head, eating crap food. Instead of doing that work, it's the exact same amount of work to get a healthy night's sleep, wake up, start with a meditation, eat healthy, hang out with really positive, motivating people, only put good stuff in my head. Like, it's the same amount of work. It's just different work. You know, and ultimately you gotta, you know, people that are stuck, you gotta get to the point where, you know, we tend to have two thermostats. You know, I heard this from a mentor of mine told me one time, like, there's two thermostats that we have in our head. So one thermostat, so it's like like a furnace. So if you get low enough, your thermostat will kick on. Now for some people it's rock bottom, right? Jail and the thermostat kicks on and you go, I can't stay here anymore. I gotta rise up. And then you start seeking out the answers and the people that'll help you get better. Right. But what most people aren't aware of is there's another thermostat level at the top. So when you start to climb up and get better, you will get to a point where some people will self-sabotage if they get too much happiness or too much success.
Right.
Because they're comfortable with it. And I've done that myself. I've self-sabotaged when all this great stuff started happening to me. I went off all my habits and perspectives that I need to hold to stay healthy, and I started doing all the wrong things again. And I caught myself out of 2 or 3 weeks into it. I'm like, what am I doing? I was starting to get really sick again. Yeah. So, you know, we need to be aware of that too, is that if nothing else as humans, we are driven for homeostasis. We are driven to keep things the same and to keep things in line with who we identify ourselves to be. So, of course, when you start to think about doing some of these things that are outside of what your norm is, on some level your brain's saying, no, keep things the same. Keep things the same.
Yeah, but because you're right. It is the same amount of work, either path you choose. The difference is the path that we're doing now, even though, like, if you're in a bad place, even though that's not a good path, it's a path that you can do on autopilot because you've been doing it for so long that you don't even have to manage it anymore. That's how your day happens, unless you affect change. And affecting change means you actually have to be present to manage that path, to manage your way on that path, because you can't do it on autopilot, or not on your autopilot as it is right now.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And you know, something you said earlier that kind of ties into this is that, you know, first responders too. I'm going to make a kind of a generalized statement, but a lot of would agree with me, I'm sure. We tend to be, well, as most people, but first responders in particular, we tend to be really routine driven.
Right.
Like we set our uniform out the night before on the back of the, in the bathroom, and then when we get to work, we kit up, whether you're a cop, paramedic, whatever, you kit up the same way every day. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get some sense of certainty in a job where it's completely uncertain. That's why we thrive on routines, right? And, when I teach the habits of resiliency to people, I teach people that these are habits. Don't attach your daily habits to routine. Because what we tend to do is, let's say you say, okay, I'm going to get up every morning, I'm going to exercise at 6, I'm going to meditate at 6:45, healthy breakfast at 7, and the first couple of days it's perfect. You're like, I'm starting to feel better already. And then on the third day, your alarm doesn't go off, your kids wake you up in the night,
right.
So you sleep in. And what do we do when our routine gets broken? We tend to go, screw it.
Right. Yeah, it's okay.
I'll start back.
Day off.
Yeah, I'll start back on Monday.
Yeah.
So instead I teach, look, just make it a habit. So, I don't meditate the same time every day. I don't exercise the same time every day. But I have to. See, this is the difference. I have to. My list of things I need to do to stay healthy is these are musts. They're not shoulds. You want to change your life, you got to take the things that you should be doing, that I know I should do, and you got to change them to musts. That's when your life starts to take a turn. Because if you wake up in the morning, and when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I must, and I have a list of things I literally have to do every day. I must do them. It's not a question. Right. Whereas if you wake up and go, well, look, I know I should, what's the chances that you're going to fall through on that?
Yeah, 0.
And ultimately, again, you go back to having a big goal or dream. If your goal or dream is just to get out of bed in the morning, or your goal or dream is just to maybe get back to work someday or something, what's the chances you're going to follow through with actions on that?
Yeah.
Whereas if your perspective is my goal, my purpose is to live an extraordinary life. I'm going to embrace life. If that's your goal, then when it comes down to, well, should I do this today? Maybe not. No, it's like, I got to do it because my end goal is so big.
Yeah. Your dogs are awake, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
No, you're absolutely right, though. I mean, you talked earlier about I think that as a group of people, as a group of injured people, we waste a lot of energy and effort on things that do not promote our growth. I'll give you an example. Like, I see people wasting a lot of time, especially on social media, putting a lot of emotional energy into changing what PTSD is called because they don't like it, or do I drop the D or keep the D, or trying to change the acronym, like because that means a lot to them. Like, to me, when I see that, it's like, in my head, what I say is stop, because none of that matters. It doesn't matter what PTSD is called. It really doesn't. And that's just wasted energy. You need to save that energy and use it on growth, because you're not going to grow by chasing down, name changes and word changes to try to combat stigma, because taking words out of the dictionary does not diminish stigma. That actually helps it grow. It doesn't make these things part of the normal conversation. It actually helps the stigma, in my point of view. But I just think there's a lot of wasted energy, and we need to use that energy towards growth. It's just my opinion.
Well, I concur 100%, and this is something that when I'm working with people one-on-one or in groups, this is a huge point that I always make, so I'm glad you brought it up. Reading a book about someone who's been through hell and about PTSD, or studying, biological-based text on PTSD, understanding how the amygdala works and all that kind of stuff, in my mind, that's wasted energy. I do not want to put stuff in my head that might justify or reinforce this notion that PTSD is this chronic disorder I'm never going to recover from. And how does it help me to put that stuff in my brain? But people, you're right, will spend energy on that or arguing about components of it. I have argued, you would not believe the number of arguments I've had with people when I've told them you can recover 100% from PTSD. People will argue with me, like other people that have PTSD.
Yeah.
They will argue and justify how, and basically what they're doing is justifying and arguing their right to stay sick.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about it is it's such a waste of energy. Look, whatever we focus on in life, that's where our energy flows, right? Whatever we focus on, that's what we experience, and that's the direction we're going to go. If you focus on, which letters are being used in PTSD, or about all the, how horrific it can be and its impacts, and then you deeply understand how you feel anxious because of the amygdalin response and blah, 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 blah. If that's where your focus is, then what are you going to experience?
Yeah.
Where's your energy going to go? You're exactly right. For me, that's just wasted time. I don't need to have any more understanding of PTSD than what I already do. What I want to focus my energy on, what I want to focus my time on, is on the other side of the spectrum, on positive psychology and things like that. Like, what do happy people do?
Yeah.
What are the perspectives that need to be taken to get past my trauma? What are the habits I need to engage with on a daily basis to move and get some momentum towards recovery and towards joy? What are the principles I need to live by that move in the opposite direction of misery and suffering where I was? I want to focus all my energy on that. I want to build my database. I want to watch videos. I want to read books. I want to hang out with people that are all going that direction. What good does it serve me looking at my rearview mirror or developing a great understanding of why I was sick? It doesn't help me. Yeah. I got no time for that. I got no time for that. I got no time. Life is short. I got kids. I got a wife. I no longer have the right to stay sick and not do what's necessary to get better. Because I got little kids looking at me, looking to see how daddy's going to respond to this adversity, looking to see how daddy's going to respond to mental illness. I don't have a right to just sit on my couch any longer and feel sorry for myself. Look, I know I'm not to blame for what happened to me, but I got to take responsibility and teach my kids that's what you do. Adversity comes. Life's going to hit you in the friggin' snot locker. Time and time again, it's going to punch you head on, right? That's just part of life. That's not being negative.
Yeah.
But whether you're going to win or not in life comes down to how you react to that. Are you gonna let life beat you to your knees and stay there? Or are you gonna go screw that up yours? Right? That's what up yours is about.
Yeah.
Rebel against adversity. It's not simple and it's a battle, but it's worth it. Because what's the price? This is your life that you're battling for. That's it. When I wake up in the morning, that's my perspective. This is a battle. I'm battling still against PTSD, bipolar, brain injury, and I'm winning. Yeah. But it's a choice. It's a choice.
It is, but then the problem comes in, like you alluded to, the real problem sets in when you get comfortable being sick. Even though being sick sucks and every day is hell, it's a hell that you know and you can rely on and it won't change. It's almost like you get comfortable with it and you embrace your illness, you embrace your sickness so much that it comes across to everybody else like you don't want to get better. Even though, of course, you do. I mean, somewhere down there does. But your actions and your complacency with being sick have allowed you to come across like you are happy being sick. Like, you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. And I really, for a long time, when I was stuck in that place, I didn't understand. I was aware of what I was doing, that I was staying stuck. And I wasn't sure why. There's a really good talk, if people can look it up on YouTube. If you search up Tony Robbins needs, the 6 needs, right. It's a really simple explanation for why we do what we do. And if you look at someone and say I was looking at myself and I was stuck in that awful place, why am I staying stuck there when I know there's things I could do to move out of it? It's because staying sick sometimes meets our needs. Okay, so right. We all have the need for certainty. That's our biggest need, right? Things to know what things are going to be like tomorrow when you wake up. Well, staying sick meets that need for certainty. We all have the need for love and connection. The biggest addiction in this culture is to have a problem. Because when you have a problem, you almost always get your needs for love and connection met. Oh, are you okay? And staying sick, I was getting that need met for love and connection. People were reaching out to me. My family felt sorry for me. I even connected with myself, felt sorry for myself, And the other need that staying sick meets is the need for significance. That's the need to feel special, unique. Right. And being a cop off duty with PTSD and he's suicidal and he's all this stuff. Yeah, I was special. I was unique. I was, I felt that way. So I was meeting my needs through staying sick. Yeah. But the thing is with meeting our needs in life is there's good ways, there's neutral ways, and there's horrible ways. I was using horrible means of meeting my needs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is the cycle. That is the obstacle that faces most of us, I would say. I want to say all of us, but I'll leave a little bit of room and I'll say most of us. That is the cycle that we just get caught in. And we just constantly believe the bullshit when our brain feeds us these lines of, whether it's like, you don't have to do that today, or you can take a day off, or it won't matter if you just don't do it this one time. We listen to that way too much when we shouldn't be. There's zero reason for us to listen to an injured brain. Like, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's tough, though. Like, I can tell you, it's hard. I struggle with it. I try to do this moment-by-moment thing, and it's very, very difficult. But I do it every day because I know it is the only path to growth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You have to. One of the things I recommend if you're struggling with that is whenever I'm stuck, and usually when I'm stuck it's because I'm sitting trying to think my way out of a problem.
Right. Now,
it's important that we contemplate and change our perspective on things, absolutely. But at the end of the day, when I catch myself stuck like that, I know what the cure is. It's massive determined action is always a cure for anything. Do anything but sit still and indulge in your negative emotions, which is what I used to do. Just sit and indulge in them. The human brain, it doesn't care whether we're euphoric or absolutely miserable and suicidal. It laps it up. And so, what I would suggest, a couple things that people can do, if you're stuck like that, is hold yourself accountable. Look, sit down. Nobody does this, but when I decided I had to get better for my kids and wife, I literally sat down and I wrote out the list of habits that I must do going forward, and I put it on my fridge with a magnet.
Right.
And then I wrote down the principles I decided I needed to live by if I wanted to be a happy person again. And I put those on my fridge. And they're still on my whiteboard beside me right now. I'm pointing with my hand to my whiteboard where I have my habit system. And then I just said, I must do these things every day. This is how I'm going to get better. But we don't do that, do we? We don't sit down. No, people will sit down and go on YouTube and go on Facebook, like you said, and they will talk for hours and they will battle with people online with people who don't even know about whether it should be PTS or PTSD or whatever.
Right.
But they spend 10 minutes to sit down and decide what the habits and perspectives and principles they need to live by that will get them better. They won't do that.
No.
It's insanity when you think about it.
Yeah.
So write the stuff down. You want to know the difference? They did this study years ago it was at Harvard, and they followed like a lot of people, like, I don't know, 10,000, let's say, a lot of people, and they followed them through. And from when they started university and went through, and then years and years later. And one of the common factors amongst happy people and successful people versus those that weren't, one of the most common factors, it sounds so simple, it's too simple to be impactful, most people think, is that they wrote down their goals and dreams on paper.
Yeah. So
when it comes to you're having a problem following through in your habits, put them on paper. You've now just increased the odds that you'll do it tenfold. Put them on paper, put them up somewhere that you can see them. Put them on your fridge. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll do them for 3 or 4 days, then they'll take the list down because they feel guilty.
I got this. I don't need the list. I'm good.
I teach people, look, when I do a workshop at the end of it, they're going home with their list of habits. They're going to put them on their fridge, and I tell people, look, here's my phone number. If you're not feeling a lot better in 30, 60, 90 days, call me. I say, call me. Here's my number. I give out my personal number to anybody. Call me. And the first thing I'm going to do when you start but tell me how you're not doing very well or how you're doing worse, the first thing I'm going to say is get up, go over to your fridge, look at your list. Have you been doing those things? That's the first question. Because if you establish a set of healthy habits and you do them every day for 30, 60 days, you will feel better, But the person who can master motivation, motivating other people, who can master this gap between I know what I should do, but I just won't do it, and doing it. I mean, there's that's the hard part, right? Is that gap, because the thing about that gap, what connects those two things between knowing what to do but not doing it is that's where the goal or dream comes in. That's where your reason why comes in. You got to have a strong reason why. So for me, the reason I must do all these things is because my reason why is so friggin' big. I have to still be an amazing father and husband. That's my biggest reason why. I mean, all the other stuff, becoming a keynote speaker or teaching others, that's part of it. But my biggest reason why every morning is my kids and wife. The second that I had a child, I gave up the right to sit and stew in my own juices any longer. I gave up the right when I married my wife to sit in self-pity and not do the things I need to do.
Yeah.
That's my reason why.
Yeah, and that's making it simple. That's boiling it down to what's important. And I think what we tend to do, and I've done this myself, is overcomplicate things. We overthink things. We don't say to ourselves, hey, stop thinking, start doing. We allow ourselves to keep thinking and then, make things so overcomplicated. It's like weight loss, right? You have all these different types of diets, all these different gadgets, all these different spiritual things you can do, crazy things to supposedly to lose weight. When in reality, there's one way to lose weight. It's all about calories in, calories out. Like, that's what it is. Like, and people don't like to hear that. Oh, no. Because that's hard. Because when you take it to that, that's hard. But that is the way. That's the only way it's ever been. Just like the way to health, to wellness, like we're talking about, there is one path, and that is by doing the right things every moment of every day. That is how you do it. There's no special, gizmo to make it easier or different way to do it so that it won't be as hard. There's no other way. Like we overcomplicate things when really it's just calories in, calories out. That's it.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I when I talk about diet and exercise in my workshops, I almost use verbatim your description of it.
Really?
We're all for this magic bullet, and I dropped 35 pounds when I got healthy, and people say, well, how did you do it? And what I joke with people say, I got this product online. I don't normally recommend supplements, but this one's great. It's called RH2000. It's all organic. It's natural. You'll lose 2 to 3 pounds a week. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to exercise. But it's, but you have to, you digest it. You just mix it up in water. It's what it is. It's rhinoceros testicle, and you have to drink 2 scoops of this a day, and you'll lose this weight. And people, and I'll start saying, like, here's the website, and I can see people writing everything down, saying something, and they perk up because they think, oh, this guy's got the magic bullet to weight loss. When no, you got to walk on a treadmill and eat apples. That's how you. Yeah. That's how you lose weight. When I teach meditation, I always bring a little unmarked vitamin type bottle, and I say, okay, this supplement, you take it, it'll decrease anxiety, it'll increase your ability to control regulate your emotions. You'll sleep better. Your cortisol levels will go down. It can actually help lower blood pressure. And here's the supplement. It's $40 for 3 months. There's no side effects. The only thing is it can be a little unsettling on your stomach. So when right after you take it, you have to sit still for 10 or 15 minutes. But other than that, and people are writing down, well, what's it called? And so then I hand the pill bottle to who's ever in the front row, and they open it up and they pull out a piece of paper, and guess what it says on it? Meditation.
Yeah.
And then suddenly everyone, they like exhale like they're, so you mean I'd have to sit still for 10 minutes?
Yeah. Like, oh, fuck this. Like, even though it's like it's the way. Like, it's guaranteed. Like, there's not even a question. You will feel better. I mean, now you may, the only way you can sabotage yourself, like you always say, if your reality and your expectations are so far apart, if you make those things far apart, then of course you're going to be disappointed. But if, you may think that you have to feel at a certain level in order to say, oh, I do feel better now. But if you're not like that and you have realistic expectations and you're just taking it moment by moment, if you meditate regularly, your life will change. Like, it will.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I meditate every day for going over 3 years now, and it's helped in every area of my life, I'm sure. I'm glad you brought that up with expectations and reality, because I tend to simplify things, and I'm sure some of your listeners are like, well, it's not that simple. It really is that simple.
It is that fucking simple.
But I never say that it's easy. And the reason I say that is, some people might be listening to me going, well, what's this guy going off about? Like, he's making it sound. No. Trust me. Wherever your listeners are, I've been to as low a place as they are. Because if they're listening, it means they're still alive. And I was on the verge of death, two drug overdoses, suicidal. I was as close to death as you could be without being there. So I understand what the darkness is.
Right.
But what I also know is that almost 100%, close to 100% of our unhappiness in life. So listeners, get ready to write this down. Here comes it. This is good. I'm going to change your lives. You ready?
Yeah.
The reason why we're unhappy, angry, anxious, whatever, almost every negative emotion we feel is based on what you just described. It's the difference between our expectations and reality. That gap is where most of unhappiness is found in life. And we tend to torture ourselves with that gap based on what we think the world should be, right? Because we all start out in life with this should story that we formed when we were like 5 or 6 years old about how the universe should be, how people should be, how our parents should be, how our spouse should be, how we should be. And then we stick with that story, the story we made up when we were little kids. We stick with that until we die. And that story has no basis necessarily. It's not in line with reality. So we go around expecting things, and then when the reality doesn't match up to it, we get upset.
Yeah.
And we're very poor learners in this area. It's really hard. We have a hard time adjusting our expectations to meet reality. Like, my wife gets angry with me because I don't get mad at the kids very often. She's like, why don't you get mad at the kids? Why don't you yell at them? Whatever. Like, why would I get mad at my kids for acting irresponsible?
Like a kid.
That's what kids do.
Yeah.
Why would I get mad at my kids for not acting like responsible adults?
Yeah.
Like, now that does not mean that I just accept that they're always going to. Of course, I keep continuing to teach them and try to teach them manners and responsibility or whatever. But when they act out of line with that, I don't get upset. I expect it.
Yeah.
That's how kids act, So when you can learn to sort of modulate your expectations in line with reality, everything changes. And a lot of my sickness, what I was upsetting with myself about, especially to do with like PTSD and my employer and all that stuff, it was because I had unrealistic expectations. But even when I learned what to expect from my employer, let's say, I still got upset when they did, I still got upset. That's like coming outside in the morning, looking up at the sun and saying, what the hell are you doing up there?
Yeah.
It's no different. Both are cases of insanity, right?
Yeah. I mean, and ever since you first taught me that whole expectation thing, that's one thing that I've used every day since. And where I mostly use it is with my relationship with my wife, because what I have found, in getting sick and trying to get better, and desperately, there's a point where you desperately try to reconnect with that person that you've hurt a lot by being sick and going through this process. Is in my head I'll say, okay, what can I do? If I do this, then I think she'll react like this. And if I say this really nice thing, or if I act really supportive, here's what's going to happen. Here's how she's going to react. So I set myself up with these expectations of how she is going to react to things. And when they don't happen, it's like, fuck. It's like, then you're all upset. But what I'll tell myself is, well, wait a minute. That whole scenario was based on my expectation of how I wanted her to react. I set myself up. Like, I set myself up perfectly. And when you can separate that and say, when you acknowledge the fact that you aren't in control of how other people react. You can't have an expectation like that. You can't try to anticipate and, support your emotions by how other people are going to react to your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I agree 100% with what you just said. We torture ourselves, right? And the other thing that we do is we tend to hold other people to a higher expectation level than we do ourselves.
Right.
So let's say your wife has a bit of a mood with you over something.
Yeah.
And then you start the story in your head about how she shouldn't talk to you like that, how she was disrespectful, and you bark back at her, right?
Yeah.
Instead of asking yourself the question that can change your relationship, which is in that moment when you have that gut, urge to respond, stop and say, what else could this mean? So she seems like she's being petty and angry.
Right.
But what else? I know this woman has good intentions. So what else could this mean? Maybe this just means she had a shitty day at work.
Right.
Maybe this just means she's struggling with something that she needs to talk about.
Yeah.
So when you stop yourself and ask yourself that question, that can change your whole relationship, that one question. What else could this mean? Because what we tend to do is we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We give ourselves lots of grace, right? Because when you're in a bad mood and you bark at your wife, you don't think twice about it. Well, I'm upset because of whatever. You give yourself room in that area, but we don't give other people. You know, like I often tell a story on stage, but it's, you know, like talking about expectations with my kids. You know, I'm not sure what it is with kids of why they can't put clothes right in the hamper instead of on the floor, or why they can't put dishes in the dishwasher instead of in the sink right beside it. Right. But I remember one time, you know, I'm always teaching my kids, put them in the dishwasher, right? So one time I'm coming into the bedroom and I see my daughter heading towards the kitchen with dirty dishes. Yeah. And I'm going to catch her in the act, right? And I don't get upset. It's like a joke. It's like an ongoing joke now, you know? but as I come, I'm right behind her now. She doesn't know. And I see her when she gets to the dishwasher and the sink, look towards my bedroom to see if my wife and I are coming out. And when she sees we're not there, she puts them in the sink and I'm right behind her. I grab her like, ha! I caught you. But now, when, in line with me holding her to a higher expectation than myself, I got a little dog. She's a Yorkie. She's 3 pounds, right? She's the love of my life, but she sometimes has accidents, and she always poops in the kitchen when she does. And they're not even turds. I think they're like chocolate truffles. She's an angel. Anyways, but when she has an accident in the kitchen, I'll go in the kitchen sometimes, and hopefully my wife's at an earshot here, and there'll be one on the kitchen floor, and I'll look over my shoulder to see if my wife's around. If she's not, I'll kick that shit under the fridge, right? Like, so how awful am I, right? Yeah. You know, at some point my wife's gonna like clean out from behind the fridge, and it's gonna be like 8 pounds of Yorkie shit there. Yeah. And I swear, when she does, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, would you look at that? Look at what the kids did. I'll blame it on them. I don't even care.
No.
They owe me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we do, like you hit on it exactly by saying that. You know, what else could be going on here? Because the tendency with me, I'll just use me as an example, of course, because I know me best. So whenever Amanda's upset, I automatically think it's my fault and it has something to do with me because of the guilt that I carry around for, you know, being so horrible and such a horrible partner when I was sick and didn't know it, and then when I hit bottom and had to come back out, all the crap that I put her through, I carry this guilt. So whenever she's upset or whenever her day's going badly, I automatically think it's my fault. So my next question to her is, when she's upset, you know, what did I do wrong? Or I make it about me, which only upsets her more because what I get back is not everything is about you. Right? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not making this about me. I'm caring about you, but really I am making it about me by assuming that the only reason my wife gets upset is all about me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, most of us tend to do that, right? We attribute everything, self-attribution is common because, you know, the only perspective we have in life is our own, you know, but with our wives especially, I mean, I was waiting for you to say that, you know, you make it about you and then you try to give her solutions. Those are like two of the favorite things
totally
that wives love it when we do that, right?
Here's how I can fix this for you.
Yeah, like, look, why don't you, well, you know, just deal with this, deal with work this way. Why don't you just tell your, you know, that's not, you know, I do a little piece at some of the workshops on just a tiny piece on intimate relationships. Now, I only speak on topics where I feel I have a degree of expertise. Now, when I say expertise, I mean that I've now got some of the educational background, but more importantly, I've got the lived experience to support it. Like you won't catch me talking about stuff that I don't live, breathe, and that wasn't pivotal in helping me. So when I talk about intimate relationships, I feel qualified to do so because I've been with my wife since I was 20 years old. We've been together 27 years, 4 kids, ups and downs, absolutely, but we still have a passionate, loving relationship, right? So I feel like I'm qualified to offer some advice in that area.
You have a degree in that.
Yeah. So, but one of the things I tell guys, and it's sort of half joking, but it really isn't because I do this to this day. And this, you know, sometimes the simplest solutions don't sound like they could possibly be the right ones because they're just too simple. But I'm a big Occam's razor guy, right? So the two things I teach for men in particular, and I'm generalizing what men and women need. I know there's a variance in this, but in general, the two things I teach are, what else could this mean? That slows you down from snapping back at somebody, right? The other question that I teach guys is, you know, so like when my wife comes home from wherever, it's the same thing every time. She comes home and she usually goes to the walk-in closet to change into comfy clothes, whatever. I immediately get up from whatever I'm doing and I follow her. So she knows I see her. I see her as a human being. I acknowledge her, right? Then I go and I put hands on her. And no, that does not mean on her boobs or like that. I touch, let her know, let her feel seen. And then here's the trick. I'm going to give you a trick. You ready? So it's not a trick. It's got to be sincere, but it sounds like a party trick.
Yeah.
So my wife will start talking about her day, and she's like most women. She's dealing with 1,000 things, right?
Right. Yeah.
And she's concerned with the relationship aspect to each of those things at work and with her family, and she's usually juggling a million things because women are great at that. Men tend to be not so good.
Right.
And I listen, and then when she's all done, I will look at her and I'll say, "What else, babe? What else?" And she'll go, "Oh, nothing." "Well, yeah, but that," and she'll talk a whole bunch more.
Right.
And then I'll say some version of, "Well, what else?" And she will talk, and then I will know I've done my job when I've listened to understand her long enough that she will eventually sum up her whole day with an emotion. And 9 times out of 10, it's, I just feel overwhelmed, or I just feel exhausted by everything.
Right.
And when you listen long enough to somebody, not just a woman, but men too,
Yeah.
when you listen long enough and intently enough to understand somebody, you will physically see their shoulders drop and them exhale a sigh of relief. What else? What else can have a huge impact on your life? And the funny thing is, I do this with my wife, and still to this day, I've been doing this for a few years, still to this day, sometimes she'll say, "Oh, you're doing that thing." You're doing that trick. But it doesn't matter. She still will keep talking. It's just a little communication tool, but it can be quite effective.
Well, because for most of us, that whole conversation that you just outlined of having that conversation, you saying what else, that is the most dangerous conversation. I'm going to use, again, generalize for men. That's the most dangerous, terrifying conversation that we can have. It's a minefield, and most of us don't get out alive. We will slip up somewhere. We will say the wrong thing at the wrong time, or disengage, or look at our phone for a second at the wrong time, and it'll blow up in our face.
Yeah, and that comes from, it partly comes from our intentions, like we don't want to be there, because let's face it, it's so easy to be self-absorbed with our own shit that we can't really truly focus on our partner. We take them for granted. The things closest to us are the things that we take most for granted, generally.
For sure.
So again, this is like everything else. In relationships, I sat down and wrote out the principles and strategies I was going to use to be a better husband. And one of the principles I live by now is put my wife's feelings first.
Yeah.
That's a starting point. Right. So if that's your principle that you've decided you're going to live by, then when you're standing there and she's getting changed and you're saying what else and you're trying not to look at your phone, that's a non-issue because you've decided that you're going to put her feelings first.
Yeah.
Now, this doesn't mean you're being a doormat. Because the reality is, what I'm talking about is loving somebody. And love, as you know, is the only resource that the more you put out, the more you get back. So I know if I put her feelings first, I'm going to be more than taken care of in my life, in my intimate relationship with my partner.
Right.
But again, who sits down and writes this stuff out? Very few people.
Yeah, nobody.
You got to be intentional with how you want your relationship to be, how you want your health to be, how you want your mental health to be. You got to put pen to paper, put it down, and decide and commit and make everything in that you put down on paper, make them musts. This is a battle, right? I keep going back to that. This is a battle that we're in.
Yeah, daily.
The biggest illusion that we have as humans is that we've always got more time. And as first responders, we should be intimately aware that that's not necessarily true. I mean, we go to tragedies all the time. We should be, we should all know, if nothing else, that things can happen in the blink of an eye and that we don't have to waste.
And the opposite is also true. We also tell ourselves that we don't have any more time to give in our day for wellness. I can't.
Yeah.
10 minutes for meditation? Fuck you. I don't have enough time for that. I don't have 10 minutes of my day. Well, that is a lie. It's a total lie.
Nobody has a time problem when it comes to exercise, meditation, treating our partner right. Yeah, my best friend's a cardiac surgeon, and so when he was doing his residency, if the greater public knew this, they'd be outraged. But like he would work 3 days in a row with no sleep.
Of course, yeah.
And just crazy. He was working, I don't know how many, if I made a number up, it would sound like I was making it up. It was crazy. He was working nonstop.
Yeah.
But his priority was always his physical health. It was always there because he knew that if he took care of himself physically, then he could, better serve his patients being healthy. So anyway, so when he would go from, like, say, gen surge on level 1 to level 6 to deal with an ICU patient, rather than take the elevator like everyone else, he would sprint the stairs, and when he got to the landing, he'd do 10 push-ups. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of exercise. It's only like 30 seconds. But when you're going up and down floors all day long, he would get in his 30 minutes exercise a day. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, I no longer ever have a time excuse.
Right.
Nobody has a time excuse for treating yourself well. That's a priority problem.
Yeah, that's right. Because like you said, if we took the time most of us just spend looking at our phone, updating our Instagram feed and our Instagram stories and Twitter and Facebook, like the amount of time we spend on that daily without even thinking about it, without even being concerned about it, is astronomical. There's so much time there.
I'll give you a little something that helped me in terms of how I spend my time. And this stuck with me. My sensei, my martial arts coach years ago, he said, when it comes to your time, always be cognizant of being in one of two places. You either want to be spending your time stress relieving or success achieving. Now, stress relieving could be watching a movie with your wife. It could be meditating. It's a lot of different things. Success achieving could be, working towards a career goal, school. Success achieving, part of success is also treating your body really well, right?
Right.
But he said you never want to be in between stress relieving or success achieving. And you just named something that for a lot of people is exactly that. It doesn't relieve stress. In fact, it causes stress. Right. And it doesn't move you towards your future. Social media. For many people, that is just time stealing.
It's dead time.
Dead time. You're not moving yourself towards happiness or success, and you're not relieving any stress.
No. Yeah, it's amazing because you're absolutely right. We just don't see it like that. It's just a way for you can shut your brain off, or so you think, even though it's still taking in all the information that you're looking at, and it can cause a lot of stress. And, all the trolling that goes on, you get involved in all this drama. And it's just it's a distraction from getting better. Is what it is. It's just a distraction that keeps you, it stalls your momentum moving forward.
Yeah, I absolutely. I have to be on social media a little bit.
Right.
My wife
Yeah,
told me I had to be, cause, for the stuff that we're doing. But other than that, I spend very little time. I don't have time to spare in terms of, wasting. Mostly, I have the time. I just don't have the energy. I don't want to waste my energy in that area. Arguing with somebody who I don't even know about something that, who cares?
Yeah. No, that's totally true. So, as we alluded to before, like the whole theme of UpTalk this year is own your growth. So, and you seem to be all about that. So what I want to know from you, I want to know your list. So I want to know what you do, just for the specific purpose because it makes you better. What do you have to do?
Okay, so what do I have to do every day? Like my habits that I keep talking about?
Yeah, how do you own your growth?
Yeah, I first of all, I recognize, so this is how I go from I should do these things to I must.
Right.
I recognize that what I tell myself and what I know is I'm about 30 days away from being really sick. And I've experienced that where I self-sabotage when I started to get some success with that furnace thermostat.
Right.
So I'm about 30 days away from, bipolar, PTSD, and brain injury symptomology.
Right.
So that's the first thing. That's my perspective on it. Is these are the things I must do. So I must meditate every day. And part of my meditation is taking a minute or two at the end of it and just saturate myself in I am just so grateful for, and just filling in the blanks. Yeah. I must eat healthy. I'm not on any special keto, organic, salt-free, gluten, whatever. I'm not on anything like that. I just eat healthy.
Right.
And that involves generally eating slightly less as opposed to eating slightly more when I can.
Right.
I must exercise. For me, I lift weights every day, and I run a lot now because I'm getting ready for a big race. Yeah. I must feed my brain every day, which is sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes hours of stuff in my ears with headphones on while I'm doing other things. And that could be a combination of life coaches, inspirational stuff, motivational stuff, topics that I want to expand my knowledge base on. But I put good stuff in my head.
Right.
The other thing I must do every day is I must connect with good people in my life in different areas.
Right.
So the good person in one area is a completely different person from someone who's good in other areas. So, but I must associate with happy, successful people. So those are the main things that I do every day. Now, there's a subset there that I started with that I still do, but don't have to do as much. Now, the one thing I do every day is on my whiteboard beside me, I always reevaluate and usually rewrite or redraw what my dream and goal is in life. Because like you said, that's the biggest thing, is my reason why. So that's part of my daily habits. So I focus on my dreams and goals. And the other thing is, and for your listeners, this is especially important when you're first starting your road to recovery, is I check in and manage my emotional state. Right. That's a habit. So like you were talking about how you're trying to get in the habit of checking in really frequently with how you're doing. Yeah. So that was key for me. And there's a whole, 2-hour talk I could give on how to manage your emotional state through what you do with your physiology and your psychology. But I don't need to check in near as much as I used to, because it's now, I did the habit for so long that my emotional center of gravity has shifted. I'm no longer anxious all the time and angry.
Yeah, you have a new autopilot. You have an actual good and healthy autopilot now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my core things, but they all tie together.
Right.
Right. They're all sort of, they're all incremental, provide incremental benefits. But when you put them all together, there's a synergistic effect. Because I'm exercising, my mood's better.
Yeah.
And because my mood's better, I'm more likely to meditate twice a day instead of once. And because I'm meditating, when something quote unquote bad does happen in my life, I'm able to deal with it better. And something we never touched on, maybe for another talk, is the principles that I've chosen to live by have a huge impact on how I perceive the world. One of my core principles that I live by is to welcome my struggles. And
embrace them.
Yeah, that perhaps more than anything else has impacted me. Our family as a whole has had some bad things happen in the last year. And, I really live these principles. These aren't like flowery horseshit sayings that I just spout off. I live them. Some bad stuff happened about a year ago to my daughter. And, as soon as it happened, and she doesn't mind me telling this story. It's something we shouldn't be ashamed to talk about. She was sexually assaulted at a party. She's 15. And, when it happened, of course there's pain, and of course there's struggle, but because this is the stuff I teach to my kids, it was just days after she came to me crying, and she's like, "Look, Dad, like I know somehow I'm going to come through this stronger and come out the other side with some new sort of purpose and meaning in my life." And that's because I live these principles and I teach them to my kids. So you take that viewpoint and how much that's helped her through this biggest adversity she's faced in her life. She's come out the other side as a result of looking at it that way, and as opposed to being beaten down. And she's right now she's away at a gifted program at Queen's University that she decided to apply to after going through that awful thing last year.
Right.
So there's always, good, bad, who knows? That's another perspective as part of welcoming your struggle, is you don't know when something bad happens that it's bad, and stop labeling it as such. It doesn't mean that we ignore our pain. In fact, I embrace it. Every amazing person I know has been through tremendous trauma, pain, struggle, adversity. So when it comes my way, why do I shove it back if I know that's true? This is just the price you got to pay in life. If you want to be an amazing, strong person who can help others, you got to go through some stuff.
Yeah.
You got to go through some stuff. So when it comes, why resist it?
Yeah. That's a really hard one for people to wrap their head around. Because, I've had that discussion, too, with people. I've had the discussion when I've allowed myself to go down the rabbit hole and go back and forth with people who want to get rid of the D. So, and every once in a while I'll jump into that pool just because I feel like it. So, it's just, I'm just trying to think of how I can say it.
Well, look, I'm a pragmatist. Okay, so I only embrace perspectives and do things that work. I'm no longer beating my head against it. So the reason that this principle works, or the reason that I embrace it, is because it works. So look, we have two choices. Here's the two choices. Anyone that ever argues about this, here's the two choices. Life is going to feed you some shit. That's just how life is. That's not being negative, right? We've all learned that. So your only choice in the matter is how you're going to react to it. So we have choice A over here, which is resist it and be angry about it and feel disappointed about it, which is another case of expectations not in line with reality.
Yes.
So that's your one choice. Resistance to pain equals suffering. That's the formula. So that's one choice. So you can go, and people will argue with you and justify the right to stay in that category, as you've met. Or you can take another perspective, which is, I need to go through, on the other side of adversity is meaning. On the other side of pain is purpose. On the other side of struggle is strength.
Right.
Now, you can take one of two points of view. If you take the first point of view, where does that get you? Nothing. If you take the other point of view, how does that work for you? Well, I just gave you an example of my daughter, how it worked for her.
Yeah.
And so going forward in her young life, every time something like that happens, I've heard her say, literally, something that I teach, good, bad, who knows? Something that any other 15-year-old would probably crumble under. I've heard her say, good, bad, who knows? I'm going to find meaning on the other side of this. So we have a choice on how we're going to do it. I just take the pragmatic approach, the one that works.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And I mean, yeah, now I remember what I was trying to say. I totally lost my train of thought there, and you saved me, so I thank you for that. But what I was trying to say is that, so I'm in this discussion about the D, and what I tell people is this. I say, I embrace it. I embrace the D in PTSD. I earned this. It wasn't the prize that I thought I was going to get at the end of my career. It wouldn't be the one that I would choose. But because of my career and the things that I chose to go through in my career, I earned this. And I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to use it because I know I need to go through it in order to be better on the other side. I'm going to embrace it. It's mine.
You know, and that's beautiful. And, you know, I've heard other people talk, you know, along of like battle scars and things like this.
Yeah.
Like, look, there's people that want to play it safe in life, in their careers, in their goals, and in every aspect of life. And they sit on the sidelines, okay? Right. And the thing is, say you're at a football game and you're on the sidelines, you still might get a stray football in the face, right? Yeah. You're going to get banged up and sore just because you sit still too much in the stands.
Right.
So you might as well get in the fucking game. Right? When I was really sick, my whole goal was to just, you know, stay safe, stay certain, and get to the finish line with half a tank of gas.
Right.
Now one of my mantras now is I want to get to the finish line scarred, marred, and running on fucking E. Yeah. I'm gonna know that I was in the fucking game. Now, is part of being in the game you're gonna get banged up? Yeah, but I expect that. So when it happens, I don't go, oh, poor me, right. I got a disease. Oh, poor me, my dad died. Oh, poor me. This is fucking life. Life is both aspects. Life is my coach used to say this. Life is the sweet caress of the cheek, and it's also the hard slap on the face. Yeah. It's both. Don't recoil from either. Embrace all of it. It's just part of the rich, unique fabric of life is the shit and the great stuff.
And you have to expect both.
Expect both.
Yeah, that's the key. So, all right, what I want to do right now, Hal, I want to check in with. I want to just do a little check-in. So, how do you think you're doing now, as far as, you know, your battle with PTSD and everything you've experienced because of the brain injury? How are you doing? If you check in on yourself right now today, how would you evaluate yourself?
I'm flourishing. I'm flourishing right now. You know, you know, and this is another point here to be made is that, you know, a lot of your listeners probably have maybe had doctors, clinicians, you know, and I've seen them all, psychologists, psychiatrists, physiatrists. You know, I went to the Brain Injury Rehab Center in Ottawa for months, years. You know, someone's opinion of you does not necessarily have to become your reality. Yeah. So how I'm doing is I refuse to live up to the expectations of some of the clinicians that I've had over the years. Because their expectations were very low when it comes to brain injury and PTSD and bipolar. It's, you know, I've refused to live up to those. So, now I'm flourishing in the sense that, I'm doing a master's degree in psychology. Yep. I'm a good dad and husband. I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm very healthy physically. You know, like I said, I'm getting ready for a 100-mile race in the fall. So in most of those areas of my life, I'm doing great. But I'll caveat that by saying, like I've said before, as well as I'm doing right now, is there ups and downs through a day? Yeah, that's part of life, sure. But the main thing is I have the realization that the only reason I'm doing as well as I am is because of everything we've been talking about, because I live this stuff. I live it every day. Every day it's a battle. I'm no different than you. I don't feel like whatever, exercising, meditating. I don't feel like listening, putting positive stuff in my head. I go through those moments.
Yeah.
But I know, and this is what keeps me on the straight and narrow, I know I'm only 30 days away from being really, really sick again. So I got to do these things. So I'm doing well. I get the same struggles as everybody else. But you know, I embrace them, and I know that there's more stuff, adversity to come around the corner, but now I'm ready for it. Not like I wasn't ready for it when I started my career as a cop, you know, and in corrections, you know, 17 years ago.
Yeah, like most things you say, that's very well said. I've gotten most of my, we'll talk about one of this in a minute, but I've gotten most of my beliefs and motivations and how to get better from you, actually, from the things that you taught us at Project Trauma Support, and just like the one-liners, like just the things to live by, I have found really helpful for me, and I know it could be helpful for so many people. So what I want to know is if people want to look up, but want to find you at Up Yours, if they want to listen, if they want to attend a talk, or if they want to try to bring you in to put on one of these workshops that you do, how can they find you?
Yeah, so you know, I'm just going to give out my email and phone number.
Okay.
Some people, especially first responders, get really freaky about giving out their information when the reality is with technology now you can find anyone anywhere.
Yeah, that's
So you know, my phone number is 613-206-1345. My email is hal.hughes@hotmail.com. My website's not up and running yet, so you can email me or text me for information on that stuff.
Right.
And then I don't have the dates and locations of the workshops that I'm doing this summer and fall, but Les Brown, that major event's October 19th in Ottawa. Right. You'll be able to find that online pretty easily.
Yeah, and you're on Facebook and on.
Yeah, I'm on all there. Yeah,
cool. And that's awesome. People can search you and find you there. Hal, so I'm going to ask you the question that I always ask is, so if there's anybody listening that I guess this whole talk that has really been to them, but if there's anybody listening that is struggling, that was in front of you for 30 seconds, what would you say to them?
Wow. Well, the first thing I'd probably do is probably give them a hug, tell them I love them. Yeah. And then I'd probably say, look, nothing's permanent. That's a mantra that I hung my hat on for a long time. Nothing is permanent. And, you know, if you're going to get better, as tough as it might be to hear, the most important thing you need to do to get better, if you're struggling, is you need to divorce the story about why you're still sick. Because the story that you're telling yourself about why you can't get better is the very thing that's getting in the way of you getting better. And that story might be that, you know, it's usually around resources. I don't have the resources to get better. I don't have the right doctors. I don't have the right workplace. I don't have the right WSIB worker. I don't have the right. It's always about resources of the story of why we're not getting better. When it's never a lack of resourcefulness is why we don't get better. It's a lack of resourcefulness, not lack of resources. That's why we don't get better. You need to learn to be more resourceful. And the first step in that is deciding that the story you've been telling yourself about why you're stuck just isn't true. I know whereof I speak. I believed my story for a long time, and I was sick for many years. As soon as I divorced that story, everything changed.
Yeah, you need to change your story. You have to rewrite your story. You can't use the same story that got you here. It just doesn't. No. It just doesn't work.
No.
Well said, brother. Hal, I've told you this before, and I'll tell you it again. You really have been very influential to me. Like, I love talking to you. We don't do it nearly enough, but like I said, just your ways of thinking and how you make it really simple, but it's true, and you get hit in the face with these truths, which I think that we need, and I'm fully appreciative of it. I mean, you look at the podcast, ever since I met you at Project Trauma Support, which was after Season 1, starting with Season 2 and on, at the end of every single podcast, I say, more love, less judgment. Those are the last words I ever say on every single podcast. And I get a lot of feedback on that, like a lot of people love it. And I tell them, like I've said on the podcast, and I've told people, I said, like, listen, I heard that from Hal Hughes, and I stole it. I outright stole it. And it's become like a tagline for the podcast. But because it's so true, and there's nothing more simple or true than that, more love, less judgment. I'm going to say we're even now because you're obviously using Up Yours now, which is kind of like UpTalk. So
yeah,
I'm going to just pretend that we're even.
Yeah, we'll call it a, like in 21, we'll call it a push. But
yeah.
But you know what, that when I start if I start working with someone one-on-one or a workshop, one of the first things I say is that I've plagiarized almost everything that I'm sharing. You know, now not to say that the funny thing is that some of the conclusions and hard truths I came up with on my own. Yeah. But you know, a Google search showed that no, actually it wasn't me. A Greek philosopher came up with that 2,000 years ago, or somebody. You know, so we all plagiarize, and I'm very wary of any teachers, psychologists, or otherwise that claim to be saying something for the first time or imparting their wisdom to me. Yeah. It's all plagiarized. So the more love, less judgment, that was, you know, a principle that I embraced and that I came up with, quote unquote. But, you know, let's face it, loving more and judging less is a concept that's been around since man's been on the planet. So you're welcome to not steal it. You're welcome to share it, right?
Oh yeah, I plagiarize the fuck out of it, buddy.
That's the goal with all this stuff is none of this stuff is copyrighted, and we don't want to hold this stuff close to ourselves. No. And be worried about. We want to give it away as much as we can, and that's how I treat all this: is give it away. None of this is mine.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, along with a lot more of your other sayings as well. I think Hal, I think you're on I totally agree with your assessment, and I think that you are on the verge of blowing up. I could see, because anybody that's listening to this, your talks would be amazing. I can imagine your workshops are amazing. You know, in my mind, you've always been a leader in this community and certainly helped save my life and many, many others. I mean, when I'm at work up here, I live with Andrew Gorman, who is a Project Trauma Support brother and runs the peer support group up here. Your name, we don't talk very much during the week because we're both really busy, going back and forth, but whenever we see each other, at least a couple times a week, we mention Hal Hughes. We do. We mention you just because you are that influential on our lives. And I just want to thank you for what you do. Please don't stop, which I know you're not going to. And, on to bigger and better. And I can't wait to see the things that you do. And you know that I love you very much. And I'm just excited. I'm excited for this for you.
Well, that's very humbling. Thanks, buddy. I love you too. And, let's just keep doing what we're doing. You know, service to others is part of our self-interest. It's one of my habits that I didn't mention, but always taking time to help other people, which is what you're doing too, bro. So you keep up the good work as well.
Well, thank you. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work for all of us. So we all need to keep doing it. All right. Thank you, brother. I know you're going away for the weekend, so have a good trip and take care of yourself and your family and everything else. And I can't wait to talk to you again.
You too, buddy. More love, less judgment.
For sure.
Now my shift is finally over. I gotta deal with what's mine.
Man, how much do I love that guy. Love talking to Hal. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As an update, Up Yours now has merchandise. So make sure you go and check out. So this is a little bit different. Go to shop.spreadshirt.ca. That's where I'm seeing the stuff. T-shirts, hats, sweaters, a little baby bodysuit, little onesie. Perfect. Oh, adjustable aprons. He has everything. Check it out. If you can't find it there, if you go to the Up Yours Facebook page, if you go to Hal Hughes' Facebook page, I'm sure you're going to find it there. So please take a moment and check that out. Thanks again to the Mental Health News Radio Network and to DT Social Solutions. And thanks to my three sponsors, the Tema Foundation, Boss Helps, and Legacy Play Society. All right, if you have a second, please check them out and see all the good work that they're doing. Really happy to have them on board. Remember to own your growth. We'll talk more about that next episode. I'll share some more of my personal growth stories. Next episode, I promise. All right, so until then, take care of yourself and each other. More love, less judgment.
'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary trying to make the difference and the first on every scene. And it's